Russell here with you for another episode of the Sports Authority Gurus podcast. Today, we're going to talk some KU football, which is officially back this Friday night, September 2nd, for the first game of the 2022 season against Tennessee Tech, 7 p.m. at the David Booth Memorial Stadium. In this episode, a familiar voice, Tyler Crispin, will join me as we preview the upcoming season for the Hawks and give out some predictions, not only for Game 1, but for the rest of the season. So let's get going and bring Tyler on. Tyler, how's it going, man? Thanks for joining me again today.
Oh, pretty good. Excited about some KU football. I think this is going to be one to remember, or at least better than what we're used to, I would think.
Yeah, so we're just a couple days away. By the time this gets out there, we'll be about 24 hours away from Game 1 of the 22 season. Before we jump in, what are you mean, football's been gone for almost a year. How excited are you that football is officially back? Not just KU football, but college football in general.
So excited to actually have something to look forward to watching instead of, trying to find a show or something to watch that, having live football back, that takes up most of your time. It's just an exciting time of year with fall football, lots of cool stuff going on.
Absolutely. So KU football is what we're going to talk about tonight. And before we jump into this upcoming season, want to do a quick recap of last year since it was the first year of the Lance Leipold era. It definitely got started on a short note, didn't have a full off season to do much with. So the Hawks went 2-10 last year. Didn't have a great year by any means, but KU fans were used to that. Towards the end of the year, though, they did play pretty well. They started to be pretty competitive in a lot of games. Honestly, probably should have won the Oklahoma game without a terrible non-call by the referees on that stupid play where Caleb Williams took the ball out. Yeah, non-forward progress. That was ridiculous. That should have been called. Forward motion should have been called there, and the play was dead. But the Hawks finished 2-10. They did have a very exhilarating, thrilling comeback overtime victory against Texas down in Texas with a walk-off win. And that sparked the much heralded Jared Casey, who walk on turned starter for the last part of the season with some injuries, but Jalen Daniels hits him in the end zone rolling out. Hawks win the game. Everyone's going nuts. So that kind of wrapped up the excitement on year one. We kind of saw a quarterback battle all season with Jason Bean and Jalen Daniels going back and forth. Bean eventually got hurt towards the end of the year, and Jalen stepped in and played pretty well. And so coming to this year, Jalen is going to be the starter. But, Leipold didn't get a whole lot of time to really do much recruiting. Had a couple transfers here and there, but what was your overall impression of him and the coaching staff for the first year?
Like you said, they get in there after the spring game. They're hired right around then, so this is their first full off season going into the first full regular season that they're going to have. And I think they're perfect for KU because Leipold seems like he's a guy that's going to stick around a while. And, it's going to take a while for KU to get built back up if they do it the right way. We know it can happen because, we won all those games under Mangino. But it's been such a long time that it's hard to remember that, a good coach goes a long way. So I've been pretty impressed with them. They seem like they know what they're doing, and they seem like they have a plan and they're sticking to it. So it'll be a fun season to watch and just see how much they've progressed between last year and now, which I think is going to be a ton.
Yeah, so they get a full off season, not only with the team to keep installing stuff and reviewing and all that, but also a whole off season to get into recruiting. We were going to do a recruiting episode a couple weeks ago to kind of catch up on all the moves that went down, and unfortunately we didn't get around to it. So that's what we're going to talk for a few minutes here now as we're jumping into this. So before we get into the whole rest of the team and how that looks for this year, let's just do a quick recap of a lot of the transfers that came in. Not going to spend any time on the incoming recruiting class because I don't really think there's any freshmen we're truly going to see do a whole lot this year. But there were a lot of incoming transfers. And right now I put down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, basically 9 big ones that we're going to kind of quickly recap. And there's actually one I do need to add that I noticed I didn't. So while you're talking about it, I'll pull them back up. Probably the biggest name on here, or one of the 2 biggest names, was Kai Thomas, running back from Michigan State, redshirt sophomore transfer. coming over. He actually played with Devin Neal and against Devin Neal in high school days from the Topeka area. So he's a huge addition there. Kind of give you that 1-2 punch with Devin Neal. Sevion Morrison, another running back transfer from Nebraska. He's a redshirt sophomore. Just a guy looking for another change of scenery. Again, gets to slide into a pretty solid running back duo to mix in there. And then probably I think the biggest name, honestly, Lonnie Phelps, the defensive end, redshirt
Sure.
junior from Miami, Ohio, slides in, instant starter on the defensive line, gives you a guy to kind of upgrade that position overnight who can compete at the Big 12 level for sacks. So he's a huge name there. Then a trio of linebackers, all very experienced. We got Lorenzo McCaskill, who's a senior coming over from Louisiana, number 7. Eric Gilliard, a linebacker, number 13, coming over from University of Central Florida, also very experienced upperclassman. And then probably the biggest name of those three, Craig Young, the redshirt junior transfer linebacker from Ohio State. He's going to be donning number 15 this year, and he too is listed as a projected starter. And then a couple big defensive backs, Marvin Grant, a redshirt junior safety from Purdue. He'll be wearing number 4. And then Kalon Gervin, if I'm saying that right, Kalon, a cornerback from Michigan State, redshirt junior transfer. He's donning number 18, and he too should be in the mix for a lot of playing time. So as I'm pulling up this other piece here, kind of give me your rundown of those guys coming in, what you're excited for, and what can you tell us and KU fans about some of those guys coming in?
Well, I know it seemed like at points last year we would get pressure on the quarterback, have a chance to sack him, and he would always get away. Like I know Gavin Potter missed a few sacks and stuff. The thing with these transfers coming in is they're sure tacklers, and I think with Lonnie Phelps we're going to be able to get consistent pressure on the quarterback, which will in turn help the linebackers. But if at worst they're way more depth than what we had. Last year we were, but after injuries, we were pretty bare at the linebacker position. So I know that the linebacker coach was talking the other day about his depth and how he has more pieces to work with, and I think that it's really going to improve the defense with all of those transfers.
Yeah, and the guy that I was going to add on that I forgot to right before we started, but that was Kobe Baines, an offensive tackle who's transferring over from Louisville. He was a very late addition just a couple days ago, about a week or two ago, and he has actually now been deemed eligible for this year. He's
Yeah, I
not
saw
currently
that.
he's not currently listed on the depth chart, but that's really because he just got here. So I doubt we see much of him early on, but there's a good chance that we see him a little bit later this season. I'm
Yeah, I think
still
once
looking
he
at his
gets a chance to
stuff.
get in the system, and it just comes down to talent, I think he'll get out there and probably he might end up be starting by the end of the season. Who knows? He was a pretty highly touted guy out of high school.
Yeah, and I was trying to pull up real quick to see what his eligibility. He's a redshirt sophomore, so he's going to be around even if he doesn't get much playing time this year. But he's a big body. He's 6'4", 297. He's probably going to play one of those outside tackle positions. So it'll be good to get him in here just to kind of catch up to speed. Probably won't see him much of this year. They've got a pretty experienced offensive line with a couple upperclassmen, but definitely one to keep an eye on for the future. So I know you kind of talked on it, but who's your favorite out of this list of transfers coming in?
Um, you know, I would probably have to say Phelps just because it's been a while since KU's had a dominant pass rusher. We've had Dorrance Armstrong, I think, was the next, like the closest thing to consistent that we've had in a long time, and he just actually signed a deal with the Cowboys, I think.
Yeah, he signed a
Um,
2-year extension.
yeah, but I think Lonnie Phelps on that defensive line, and then McCaskill, he has a lot of experience, and he's a hitter, so I think he'll help kind of guide because overall the linebackers are pretty young outside of all the transfers. And I think even I think he's a sophomore, Taiwan Berryhill. He's
Hmm.
one of the linebackers. He was listed in the starting lineup. So I
Yep.
think having a guy like McCaskill in that room can only benefit those guys. And I think you already kind of see it because their level of the returners level of play kind of raised. They played better, I think, because of the competition that was brought on by all the transfers.
Yeah, I think Lonnie Phelps is definitely going to bring a lot of intensity to that defensive line. Last year, they didn't really play great. They had a bunch of guys that have been around the program a while, just not I wouldn't say they're the most talented. Had some nice games here and there, but he definitely a guy who's going to come in and bring some fire to that line and get after the quarterback. Me personally, I think I'm most excited about Kai Thomas, just because of that connection with Devin Neal. He was very dynamic. Didn't have a huge season at Michigan State, but was very big into their offense, big part of their offense. But he's going to come in and split time. I think he's going to be a great addition just because you'll have a nice change of pace with Devin Neal out there and Daniel Highshaw and then even Sevion Morrison. So I think
I
that's
think
going to
the
be big.
offense is built to run the ball, so definitely, I think he'll have a great season,
Yeah, this should
especially
be
with
one
all
of those
the
years where it's similar to the time that when we had Puka and Khalil Herbert, how we just
yeah, and they
run the
kind
ball,
of
run the ball, run the ball.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so
and it
looking
definitely
at this,
feeds into our strengths, I think.
looking at this group, about half this group is offensive players. Most of them are defensive players. Of those transfers, do you think the offensive transfers are going to have a bigger impact this season or the defensive transfers?
I think defense, just because on offense we have Daniels and Neal's there. I do think Kai Thomas is going to jump in and have a good season, but there seemed like there was more. We improved at least on paper more on defense with the number of guys that we got over there. I think more you'll see they'll have more of an opportunity to play than some of the offensive transfers. So I'm going to go with defense.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. Just those are a lot of playmakers on defense, especially that linebacker core. Even if not all three of them are starting, that's a lot of experience that KU just hasn't had on their defense last couple of years. They had a really young linebacker core last year, and really outside of Kenny Logan and Ricky Thomas, um, a pretty young defensive back group too, which is still young, but they get some nice pieces to add in there. So I definitely agree with you there. Defense is going to get a big lift. Finally, should be able to put out a defense that can compete and with Big 12 play and really kind of keep us in game so we don't see all these blowouts.
And we're gonna
Um,
have depth too. I
yeah,
think that's where you see the blowouts. We may hang with the team for a half, but that's when you really see the talent on the depth chart down a ways that you've got to have guys that can come in and that level of play doesn't drop very much. And I
yeah,
think that's what we are
lot of
missing
guys
from most of the
they
Big
can
12
rotate in
teams.
there. So
Yeah.
speaking of rotations, let's kind of break through the depth chart here. And we're going to start on offense. Not a whole lot of change from last year, a couple minor pieces here and there. Jalen Daniels edges out Jason Bean as the QB1, which I kind of think everybody knew that was going to be the case. Bean's very dynamic, and from everything we've heard, has had a fantastic camp. But this was the move all along. Jalen Daniels is the guy for the future. I think they'll mix in Bean a lot here and there, in
Exactly.
different ways. But Daniels edges out for QB1. That lines up Devin Neal as the first running back on the depth chart. Um, Again, no surprise there. Solid rookie season, freshman season, and he's going to be a big part of that offense. But we'll get into the rotations with the other running backs like we talked about. Then on your receivers, you lose Kwame Lasser, who is a big piece of your receiving core. Lots of catches every game. So you do have to replace that. So right now you're looking at Lawrence Arnold, who was going to transfer and then decided to end up staying and come back. So he's going to be starting on one side. Luke Grimm starting in the other, mostly as a slot receiver, but he's your other starting receiver with some experience. Played a lot last year. KU really went really young at receiver last year, so he got a lot of playing time and looks really solid. And then Quentin Skinner, who we didn't really see much at all last year, I'm pretty sure he redshirted. He's listed as the other top receiver. Then you look at your tight ends. We got Mason Fairchild and Trevor Cardell, both who have been here a couple years now and experienced. Don't know what kind of season they'll have, but I think they do have potential to kind of eat up yardage through the middle and take some pressure off the outside. And then, of course, Jared Casey, fan favorite, sliding in at tight end number 3. So before we get into rotations, just give me your overall input on that starting rotation. And we're not going to really talk about the offensive line, but just what do you think of that initial depth chart release that we see?
It looked good to me. The thing that was kind of questioned here over the last several days is receiver, just because of the off the field thing that's
Hmm.
going on. I think there was a couple of players that probably would have figured into that depth chart if they wouldn't have. I guess what do you? what was it, a road rage incident or something? Anyway,
Yeah, we
but
won't spend too much time. Let's just call it young men stupidity.
yeah, yeah. Well, anyway, I think that's where it looks a little different with guys having to step up. Um, but overall, I think we're going to run the ball a lot with those running backs. How can you not? I mean,
Yeah.
you've got the what was it, three former 4 stars, and like you said, Devin Neal and Kai Thomas have experience playing against and with each other. So it looks pretty solid. I even with I think if they can get creative and find a way to use Bean, maybe in some like reverses, run option, and trying to get him out in the open space where he can show off his because they're saying he's like might be the fastest guy in the Big 12, like just
Yeah, he's
straight
got
line
some
speed.
insane speed.
So you got to try to find a way to use that, I would think. And then of course they'll get creative and you try to get Jared Casey out there and get him many out because supposedly he has the best hands on the team, and you can utilize somebody like that. They're just gonna have
Yeah.
to get creative because he's 5'10" playing tight end, but he'll block in the run game, and I think we'll run the ball just until run until they make us have to throw it, and then hopefully running the ball will shorten the game, and we could stay in a lot more games that way. And yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, so as I look at this depth chart, the big concern I have, which kind of like you mentioned, is that receiving core. Again, very young. Luke Grimm is a little bit older, but he didn't really play until last year. Lawrence Arnold, good talent. Um, also, he's probably the most talented receiver we have, just an overall talent standpoint, but just not a lot of excitement in the receiving room. If Trevor Wilson comes back, great, but I don't anticipate that happening. I think he should be kicked off the team.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
anticipate
down
Tanaka
for the
Scott doing
first
much,
game.
but Stephen McBride's really your only other experienced receiver on the roster that has actually played in some game time. So he's kind of one of the rotational receivers. But that running back group, that's going to be fun to watch. Like I said, we got Devin Neal, Daniel Highshaw, Kai Thomas, and Sevion Morrison. All experienced running backs. Daniel Highshaw unfortunately had to miss all of last year. He had several injuries in training camp, and so they ended up redshirting him. Um, but he was one his freshman season 2 years ago, looked pretty solid. If I, you know, I had the benefit last year. I was working breakfast for KU football at my other job in the morning, so I got to see a lot of these guys up front, hands on. And Daniel Highshaw has some super thick thighs, so he's a
He
guy I
looks like
think
a monster. Just the way he
he's a
runs,
big running
he's
back.
like a bowling ball. It's crazy. He reminds me of who's the guy that used to play for the Buccaneers that they called like the muscle hamster, Doug Martin. Is that who
Oh,
it
Doug
was?
Martin, yeah,
Yeah, he reminds me of that style, kind of undersized but jacked, so they can hide behind the lineman and then bounce off tackles.
yeah,
I think he's gonna have a good year.
he could easily fight for extra yardage. So yeah, that running back group, it'll be interesting to see how Morrison and Thomas mix in since they haven't been in this system before. So I think early on we'll see a lot of Devin Neal and Daniel Highshaw as Thomas and Morrison get kind of work into it. But they're going to be a lot of fun. So the offense, I think if anything, I'm looking at the tight end position as a potential X factor. Seeing if Mason Fairchild and Trevor Cardell can kind of take that next step and be an integral part of the offense, whereas last year they really weren't much of a factor. A couple targets a game, that's about it. So, but offense, it's gonna we'll kind of do some predictions here in a few minutes, but offense is gonna play itself out. Really, it's seeing how the receiving core looks. So let's jump over to the defensive side. And here, again, not a lot of question marks. I think it's pretty straightforward. We'll start with their defensive line. You've got Lonnie Phelps and Malcolm Lee at the defensive end positions, both experienced. Malcolm Lee played a lot of defensive tackle last year. Now they're moving him to the outside and kind of switch things up there. And then a couple other experience. This is basically the most experienced position on the team. All of their starters are juniors or seniors. So in the middle, they've got Sam Burt, who is coming back for an extra year. Uh, he was a big part last year, got hurt, had to miss most of the season. So he comes back and he's one of their team captains this year. He's going to be plugging the middle alongside another upperclassman, Caleb Sampson, who looked pretty good in parts last year, but has a whole off season in this new program to continue to develop and show what he's worth. Then as we step out aside to the linebackers, the two guys carrying over from last year, Rich Miller and Taiwan Berryhill, are going to be your starters. They're the two that have been outside of Gavin Potter. Those two have had the most time in this system. But then Craig Young, the transfer from Ohio State. He's been listed as the other starting linebacker right now, ahead of a guy like Gavin Potter. Probably again, mostly just because of talent and skill set there. Gavin Potter's a decent linebacker, but Craig Young is better. And then you've got
And
your
he's got
rotational
speed to
guys.
burn.
Yeah. So then that means Gavin Potter, Eric Gilliard, and Lorenzo McCaskill are your rotational linebackers. I think we'll see a lot of those six just in general rotating around. Rich Miller will probably be there, three down guy, if not all four snaps. But they have a lot of depth at that position to rotate around, which will be good for them as the season progresses. Then we look at the defensive back group and the two outside corners also both started last year. Jacoby Bryant on one side and Romello Dotson on the other. Bryant had an up and down freshman season. Ended up losing his spot towards the end of the year and coming off the bench, but now he has a chance to be the starting outside corner again alongside Romello Dotson, who has been in the system a couple years now. Then, of course, you've got your team captain, your defensive anchor, Kenny Logan at safety, decided to come back for an extra year, and he's on a lot of awards lists for the upcoming season. So he's one you're going to be watching every single play because he seems to be like one of those guys that wherever the ball is, he finds a way to make a play or get to the ball. So definitely
And
huge
he's
having
not
him back.
afraid to throw his body around
Yeah,
too. It seems like he always coming up hurt because he's trying to deliver the blow and get in on
Yeah,
everything.
he's
And
a lot like Mike Lee that we had a couple years ago. Just
exactly,
always
yeah,
seems to be around the ball, and when he's there, he makes a big hit for a small guy. And then alongside him, you got OJ Burrows, who came onto the scene last year. Didn't get a lot of playing time early on, but as we went down the stretch, we really played a ton of the freshmen, and Burrows was one of them. And he looked to be like one of the most talented safeties and corners we had on the team. So he's going to be slotting in alongside Kenny Logan as the starting safety, which then means they've got a rotation of guys in the corner and safety coming off the bench. And Gervin from Michigan State transfer, he's going to be one of them. He's your primary nickel corner, playing in the slot. And then you've got Quentin Lassiter, the younger brother of Kwame Lassiter. He's going to be fighting for some playing time. Marvin Grant, the transfer safety, he'll be rotating in at safety. And then Cameron Dabney, who actually changed his name. I don't know what it is right now, but I noticed on the roster it doesn't say Cameron anymore. He was another guy that got
yeah,
playing
yeah.
time
I
last
think
year, and he's going to be rotating in.
yeah, I think I saw something on the when I was looking at it too. Something didn't seem quite right.
Yeah, it was just he's going by Shad or Shad. So
Oh
I
yeah,
don't
that's what
know
it
where
is.
where that comes from. But that's your defensive lineup for now. I'm sure we'll see a lot of guys rotate in and out, but with that initial depth chart on the defense, again, which position group are you most excited about and which position group do you think still has some questions to answer?
I would say most excited about probably the linebackers, just because, like you said, we haven't had this type of linebacker talent in quite a while, and just guys like Craig Young and even Eric Gilliard and all those guys have the ability to cover sideline to sideline, and then you bring in a guy like McCaskill, and we should be able to stop the run and hopefully not miss very many tackles. So probably most excited about the linebackers. You could say, I guess maybe the secondary has the most to prove, just because they're young, they have experience, but like I think OJ Burrows was pretty under recruited just because of his size. But you could see it like he played last year. He showed flashes, and I think if him and some of the other younger guys build on that, we should be fine. But overall, it's I think we're going to be much improved to into last year, and of course, like what we've been used to over the last 10 years or so.
Yeah, that combination of young guys mixed in with those transfers, I think we're gonna have a relatively balanced defense. I agree with you though. I think the corners are probably the one spot that I say is the weakest. I think they are very athletic corners, young guys that can do a lot. Um, but how consistent are they going to be? That's probably the weakest spot. But I think that front seven, that the D line, the trenches, and that linebacking group behind them, those are going to be the heart and soul of the defense outside of Kenny Logan. If those guys can handle the front, stop the run, keep the quarterbacks contained, and get to the quarterback, that'll give those corners enough of a break so they don't have to cover all the way up and down the field. So
I,
that's what I'm looking forward to.
yeah, I think one guy we missed was Eddie Wilson on the
Yes.
interior. I think he'll play a lot too because he had a good season last year, and I think stopping the run, that's his main job. I think he'll have a good season too.
Yeah, he's one of the bigger defensive tackles they have. A little bit bigger body, run stuffer.
Yeah,
Hopefully can take a couple blocks at a time to get some the guys around the edge around him. Um, so let's take a look at this first game, Friday night, Tennessee Tech. KU's opening as a 27.5 point favorite. Not really a big surprise that they're a favorite. Was a little surprised that it's that high.
yeah. I
But
was
I think that
surprised
just
there were
shows
four,
you
four
how much
touchdowns.
yeah, 27.5 is that's probably one of their biggest opening night lines they've had. And I think that just shows you how excited people are about this potential offense. Now they
Yeah.
have some more consistency in it, but that running back group. So tell me, what are you looking forward to in game one? What do you want to see? What do you expect to see? What are some of your, just things that should happen game one that to get fans excited?
Well, first, I'm looking forward to football being back. KU football. He when they're good, they're really fun to watch, and I hope we see. If not, if we don't make a go 6-6, make a bowl game. I hope that we're at least competitive in all games, and with a touchdown, a couple of possessions against teams like Oklahoma and Oklahoma State in the better half of the conference. I hope to see that we're able to take care of Tennessee Tech pretty handily. Because was it South Dakota State last year that took a game-winning drive? It
Hmm.
was. We ended up winning, but I don't want it to be that close this time. It'd be nice if we were just dominant in all phases and got a pretty handily win and got to move on to West Virginia.
What do you think you're going to see out of the offense? You think it's going to be pretty much run heavy? Are they going to mix in both quarterbacks? What do you expect to see there?
Yeah, I think it'll be run heavy, and then I think they'll take the occasional deep shot. They could even line Bean up at receiver and maybe throw a wide receiver screen and see what he can do if he gets out in the open. Um, but I think it's mostly just going to be using the power of Devin Neal and Kai Thomas and Highshaw and Morrison and just kind of wear, especially a team like Tennessee Tech, a lower division school. Hopefully we can use our physicality and our
Hmm.
and our numbers to be able to wear them down and you know blow them out that way, kind of dominate them over time.
All right, give me your final score prediction.
Final score prediction. I'm gonna go with 38-7 KU.
Okay, so you do have a full scale blowout.
Hey, that's what I'm hoping for.
I'm going to be a little
What do you think?
conservative. This is one I think I want to take the under on the point spread and say KU that goes 28-17. A little bit closer than we want it to be, but I'd rather be on that side than expect a blowout and then be disappointed. I think the offense is going to do
Yeah,
just fine. I'm just curious to see how does the defense look since a lot of new pieces that haven't played together. And can those guys
yeah, they're
control
just
the
gonna need
control the
time.
lines? All right, how about the rest of the season projections? We've seen everywhere from KU being a one-win team to a potential four-win team. Looking at the schedule here, after Tennessee Tech, they've got West Virginia the following week, and then down to Houston, and then they get Duke, and then Iowa State, TCU, Oklahoma, Baylor, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, Texas, and then we finish off with K-State at the end of the year. Right now, KU is the favorite against West Virginia, so that would give them a 2-0 start to the season and a first win in the Big 12 race. Houston is a good team. Doesn't look like that's going to be much of a win there unless we just come out surprisingly. Duke, that's always a hand toss up because Duke's never a
Yeah,
great football team. Just like us, though, we're never a good football team either. And then Iowa State, they're kind of on the decline, so there's another potential win there. Then you've got your gauntlet of the Big 12, which I don't think really I mean, Oklahoma's going to be good. I think Baylor's still going to be good. But really, there's nothing that is super. None of these teams are crazy good this year like years past. So, what do you think KU's shakeup's going to look like for the rest of the year?
Yeah, optimistically as a KU fan, I hope he gets to 6-6, but I'll be happy and it'll be more realistic if we're in that, 4 game range.
Mhm.
I think they can get to 4 wins. Um, you know, like you said, Iowa State, West Virginia, Tennessee Tech, there's 3 right there, so they'd have to get 1 out of the rest of the season. And I think between, teams like TCU and and I think we always give Texas a game, so you would have to think that we'll be in a lot of games this year. Hoping for a bowl game, but kind of realistic and know that these things take more than a year or two or what the time Leopold's had. So I'd say it's the most we've had to look forward to in a while, and it's exciting.
Yeah, it's definitely a year where I don't think whatever the final win-loss column is, I don't think you're unless we only win like 1 or 2 games this year. I think KU fans will be happy with anything from 3 to 4 to 5 if we look like we're competing hard and we're developing and growing. So
Yep.
me personally, I've got us going 4-8. I think we obviously start off the year with a win over Tennessee Tech. Definitely beat West Virginia, take a loss to Houston, but then beat Duke. And then I've got KU winning 2 Big 12 games, whether that is Iowa State because they're on the decline or a potential upset of K-State at the end of the year.
Oh, I
I
hope
I've
so.
got I
Oh,
think that could be just because we've got a lot more to play for this year and the team that looks better in general. That is a potential. I
especially with how
don't
they
feel
beat us
confident in.
last year.
So I've got them going
Especially with
four
how
and
they
eight.
beat us last year. Yeah, K State would be a beautiful win. Here's
It would,
hoping that
especially to
that
finish the year.
happens.
You know,
Yeah,
and again, I don't personally, I'm not going to care too much what their final win-loss record is. Again, as long as they look like we're competitive. If our offense can average above 25 points a game, that would be nice just in general because
yeah, yeah,
we've seen years where the defense looks really solid and they hold opponents down well, but then the offense can't do anything. Then we've seen years where the offense is playing pretty well, but the defense can't hold their breath for anything. So I just want to see them be competitive and develop and improve week by week and basically go out there and not look disappointing on the field. Go out there and look like you belong in the Big 12 and you
yep.
can actually compete with them.
And play all 4 quarters.
Yeah, all 4 quarters. So let's go through a couple predictions before we get out of here. Who do you think is going to end up leading the team in rushing yards?
Oh, that's tough because you know, Neil's the starter from last year. You got Kai Thomas, Highshaw's look good, and then Morrison's kind of a wild card. I'm gonna kind of go maybe a little bit of a shock, but I'm gonna say Highshaw. I just like the way he runs. He runs hard. If he gets enough opportunities, I think he might lead the team in rushing.
Okay, okay. I wouldn't have gone that route, but I could see what you're saying there. I think Neil is the safe bet because he's probably going to get the most carries. He's going to probably have the most playing time. I think Kai Thomas could be a potential one for that spot just because I think he's got some nice breakaway speed. So he could
Yeah,
have a year like Khalil Herbert had where he had to just these big chunk plays of 40,
yeah,
50
where he'd
yards
have
a
a
couple times a
70-yard
game.
run about every
So
game. Yeah.
do you think we have 2 running backs that get over 500 yards?
Oh, yeah, I think so. They could yeah, I could for sure see that happening.
How about any of them
Now, if we
breaking
had
a
two
thousand
over a
yards?
thousand, I would say if anybody was gonna break 1,000, it would be Neil. But like you said, Kai could break off a few big runs, and then all of a sudden, 1,000 yards doesn't look like it's that far away.
Yeah, I think between that whole group, if they can get over 2,000 rushing yards across the group, I think I'd be pretty pleased with that. How about receivers? I know we're not really excited about the receiving unit, but who do you think ends up leading the team in total yards, and then who do you think gets the most receiving touchdowns?
In total yards, I know who I still might say him because I know he's suspended for a game, but I think he's going to surprise some people. I'm going to say total yards Tanaka Scott. I
Really?
think the freshman, if he can stay out of trouble, I think he can. I think he can do it. But as far as receiving touchdowns, I'm going to go with Casey because Casey's always in the end zone.
Okay,
It seems
okay.
like, and
All right.
and and he's got great hands, and I think if they put him in and we're close to the goal line, we have to throw it. I think it's going to Casey. So
Okay. My pick, I would say total yards. I think it's going to be Luke Grimm, mostly because he's going to operate out of the slot. I think he's going to see the most targets. Um, Touchdowns, I want to say Lawrence Arnold because he can go up and get it. But again, something I not Jared Casey, but I have a feeling the tight ends are going to be a big part of the red zone this year because I think we're going to be in the red zone a lot more in
yeah,
general.
especially with running the ball, and it doesn't hurt that your offensive coordinator's the tight end coach, so you might
Yeah.
want to show some tight ends love. And
So I'm gonna go Trevor Cardell over Mason Fairchild, even though he's listed as tight end too. But
yeah,
he's about 6'5", so he can go up there and catch it. So I think Cardell leads the team in touchdowns. I don't really think we're gonna see a whole lot of passing touchdowns in general. I think it's gonna be a lot of
no,
rushing touchdowns. So I'm gonna say Cardell leads the team with 5. And I know that sounds super low, but I think even on the receivers, we're
I
gonna
was
see
gonna
the ball
say
spread
Jared
around.
Casey was like 4 or 5 too. So I mean, you're right where I was thinking. I don't think, especially if we're in the red zone, I don't think we're gonna opt to pass with our offensive line and the running backs that we do have. I think there's gonna be a lot of rushing touchdowns, and maybe we surprise some people with a big play down the field, and that's how we get our receiving touchdowns. But
How
who
about
knows?
let's go defensive side. Any big predictions you want to lay out there? I mean, I think it's pretty easy to say Lonnie Phelps probably leads the team in sacks. He's probably your best pick there, but who do you think leads the team in tackles?
Tackles. I hope it's not one of the safeties because that usually means they're making the tackles way too
Yeah.
far down the field. So hopefully it'll be one of the linebackers. But I do think there's a defensive lineman. I think he's a redshirt freshman, Tommy Dunn.
Oh
If
yeah,
he
Tommy
gets on
Dunn,
the
yeah.
field, I think he's going to surprise some people. Because they said he's put on 20 or 30 pounds and he hasn't gotten, he hasn't lost any of his athletic ability. So they say he's in the best shape ever, and he's impressed some people. So if he can crack the rotation, I think he'll be, he might get 2 or 3 sacks over the season. But I think the defense is going to be even more, at least in the beginning, more interesting to watch because you've got a lot of question marks with new guys and new places and young guys who have played, and it'll be interesting to see how all that comes together.
All right. Any other final predictions you got for us for this upcoming year? I know we'll kind of touch base throughout the season and see how we're going, but anything else you want to get out there
Yeah,
now before the season starts we can put on paper?
no, I just hope we're competitive, and as long as we give effort and look like we're improving and learning, I think I'll be pretty happy. I think KU football is in good hands, and I think we're all finally on the uptick this time. So it's exciting, and I can't wait for Friday.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Going to be a good season ahead. I think the Leipold era is going to be quite successful. May take a little bit of time to get there back to bowl status, but I think we've got a lot to look forward to. So again, first game of the season is this Friday, September 2nd, 7 p.m. at David Booth Memorial Stadium. If you are able to, get down there and pack the booth, as we say, for game one, where the Hawks, again, are currently sitting as a 27.5-point favorite for the opening weekend of college football. Tyler, thanks again for joining me today. I look forward to having you on more to talk some more KU football throughout the season, as well as some Chief stuff that we'll be getting into soon. So thanks for joining me today, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. It was a lot of fun. It's good to talk with you, and here's to a good KU season and rock chalk, man.
Absolutely. For you, the listeners, thank you guys so much for taking the time to check this episode out. Until next time, rock chalk. This was another episode of the Sports Authority Gurus podcast. For future episodes, you can find us on Spotify, Podbean.com, the iHeartRadio app, and on YouTube. Wherever you do listen to us from, please hit the subscribe button, give us a great review, and most importantly, share with your friends.